Alright everybody, we are not done with festivals just yet for 2022. For our indie showcase this week, there's going to be all the games that I checked out from the first ever turn-based festival that was on Steam. All the games you're going to see are either demos or press key submissions. And with that, let's get on with the showcase. Alright. We are starting things off with Dino Mercs. This is a deck-building roguelike with a premise that I just find both interesting and hilarious. We control a PMC of military dinosaurs. Yep, the dinosaurs not only are armed with guns, lasers, and military-grade equipment, but they're also fighting each other. And it's up to us to run our PMC the best way possible, scoring more resources and growing it. Now, the general play of this one is that each round of combat you gain 5 cards from your deck and from the enemy's deck itself. Where you place the card on this kind of board from left to right determines the potency of it. The further to the left of the card, the stronger it will be. Further to the right, the weaker it will be. But certain cards may also manipulate in different fields as well. So you have to decide kind of where do you want to place your cards and which effects you want to be more pronounced. And of course, after combat, you get to buy more cards. There's also this kind of like base defense mode as well. Now, the general gameplay of this one is alright, but I wish there was more kind of visual flair to the different dinosaurs that you see in the different corners. And I'm pretty sure that some of these card effects or just the UX in general may not be fully in yet, because I was buying cards and my money was not going down for a certain point. This one shows some promise, but I would like to see I think a little bit more to make it stand out from the rest of the dinosaur pack. We now turn to the very interesting Dicey Birdball. The thumbnail will have to be updated as they change the game's name. This is kind of like a take off of tabletop football, a Blood Bowl style game, but without all that killing and replaced with, well, cute birds. The rules of this one may be a little hard to follow, it was kind of causing some trouble on stream, but the gist of this is that every turn you get dice. The dice can be put into the various player abilities that you see on the left hand side of the screen, with certain abilities having dice requirements. Maybe odd number, even number, less than 3, higher than 4, you get the picture. When you put a dice into the spot, it is consumed and that ability can be used. Your mission is to move your birds across the field, pick up the football, and take it to the opposing team's end zone while they're trying to do the same to you. There is even more dice RNG when 2 birds run into each other to determine whether or not the ball gets knocked away or not. And the game, or the footage you're seeing right here, is taken from kind of like the quick play, like PvP, or in this case, player versus AI mode. But there is a full-on campaign that plays out with you cultivating your team starting from 1 bird and growing both it and the game with additional fields, more abilities, increasing stats, etc., etc. This one, I think the main issue with it is that it is very hard, I think, as you're watching this footage to kind of process what is going on. I was really getting into this one, but would like to see, I think, more depth or kind of where the cultivation of the campaign goes. Because we kind of spent our entire play of it on this kind of quick play to see what the gameplay is all about. So if you're looking for another dice-centric game, and in the mood for some bird ball, football, whatever kind of ball, then I would definitely recommend checking this one out. We now have Card Crawl Adventure. This is a sequel to a game called Card Crawl, and both games feature this kind of solitaire-style deck-building-esque roguelike. There have been quite a few games like this, I believe, on mobile, but this one does have some interesting aspects to it. How it works is that every board, you draw your path starting from any card around. Going over weapon cards will add to your attack, allowing you to kill enemies. Special ability cards will activate, and you'll need to manage your health and energy. That's the kind of weight number on the bottom right hand corner. Certain cards will require you to spend energy to use them, and if you run out, it will be taken from your health pool. So your mission in this is that you want to make the best turn possible that you can. Killing all the enemies that you can, picking up all the loot that you need. Whatever cards you go across will be removed or defeated if you kill their health, and you'll keep going until you complete various challenges from the respective tavern. Each tavern that you visit in the campaign will have unique rules that will also affect what you can and can't do. And this one definitely has some charming gameplay to it. And while it may not be, I think, the most challenging deck building roguelike we've seen, this one looks like it will be really meant for kind of a more relaxed or streamlined experience. The store page says that they're not looking for like super overly long runs in this one. So if you are looking for a roguelike and one that's not going to tax your time, I would at least give Card Crawl Adventure a check. We now have Mars Tactics, and this is the first of, well, few XCOM-like games that are going to be on this video. For this one, we are going to Mars to try and take it over from rivals and enemies. Now, unfortunately, the strategic layer is not yet available in the demo build that we played. We only got combat. And the combat they're going for is definitely XCOM, or I should say original XCOM-like. Characters have a few actions per turn, and you're going to have to make heavy use of cover and positioning in order to deal with enemies and knock out their action points. The unique thing that Mars Tactics does is that when characters are shot at, it suppresses them to the point that it removes their AP, thereby preventing them from performing additional actions. My issue with this one is that a lot of the depth is not really conveyed that well through the UI, and I found it to be very frustrating to play because of it. There's definitely something here for the hardcore XCOM fan, but I'm hoping that things will be improved from a UI and a UX perspective in future builds, and hopefully we'll be able to get a look at the strategic layer in a future build as well. We now have Sigil of the Magi. This is a deck building style game. It reminds me a little bit of the tactical strategy that I saw in Warriors of the Nile 1 and 2, but this one has a greater emphasis on cards. You will build your party out of 3 characters. At the start of the game, it promises that you have fixed parties, but similar to Enter the Breach, you will eventually unlock the ability to mix and match. Each character has their own unique deck of cards. You can also find new cards after combat, and of course upgrade them to gain new abilities, lower their costs, etc, etc. Combat plays out very similar to that of some of the other games we've seen. You can move your characters at least without any energy penalty. Your energy or mana in the bottom left is what drives the cards. As an interesting element, you can see kind of like the card holder in the middle of the screen. You can bank a card basically at the cost of its mana, and then that card can be used in a later turn completely free of costs. And there are several cards in the game that are procced or based around this, such as gaining more damage based on the number of cards in your rack, how long it stays in there, and so on and so on. You'll also find artifacts that can allow you to change your character's properties, and very similar to Slay the Spire, can lead to some very interesting card combinations. There is definitely potential here for fans of deck building, tactical strategy, somewhere in the middle of those two. It does feel a little bit tricky at the moment. Some of the enemies, especially when they get really tanky, can just steamroll over your party, and you really need to get the luck of the draw in terms of having cards and artifacts that synergize together. But there is certainly promise here, and I would recommend this one if you are looking for a tactical strategy with a little bit of card play thrown in. we're moving to another deck building style game with Starvaders. This one combines deck building, tactical play, and Space Invaders for a very interesting mix of designs. The challenge here is that every turn, the enemies will move down that ever closer to your base. When they get to the bottom 3 rows, if you do not defeat them in time, they will leave and raise your Doom meter that you see in the upper left. When Doom fills up, you will lose the run. Now, the interesting mechanic here is that you have this heat gauge that's being blocked by my video right now. Every card you play can consume or raise the meter up. When it completely fills up, you can continue to play a card, but if you do, it will burn that card, making it inoperable for the rest of the actual battle. But you also get cards that can proc off of burn cards, repair them, etc, etc. Of course, after you finish a fight, you'll be able to upgrade or gain new cards, there are artifacts, and again, all that other good deck building roguelike stuff. And I was really enjoying this. This is definitely one of those games that is going to hinge on your ability to form a cohesive build based on the cards you get access to, but if you're able to do that, it can lead to some very satisfying plays. And the game certainly evolves as new enemies are introduced that can spawn new enemies, attack you, or mess with the board in some capacity. And while the demo that we played is only available on itch right now, there is certainly potential here for fans looking for a different kind of deck building roguelike. We now have Research and Destroy. This is a kind of real-time turn-based tactical shooter game, which is a very easy descriptor, I know. But the simplest way to describe this would be Valkyria Chronicles, but with kind of 70s or 60s sci-fi comic science fun thrown in. In our story, the world has been taken over by the supernatural and is literally up to science in order to save everyone and defeat all kinds of zombies, mummies, ghosts, and other creepy crawlies that go bump in the night. Now, the Valkyria Chronicles comparison is very apt here. How this works is that your team of 3 each have 8 seconds per turn. You lose time whenever you are moving, aiming, shooting, or performing a task. When all 3 of your characters have no more time left, the turn is over, enemies will spawn in or do their attack, and you will need to respond accordingly. Unlike Valkyria Chronicles, there's a lot more movement and kind of, I guess, verticality in this one, as your one character can kind of like jetpack around. You'll be able to snipe, blast, and do other sciencey related things to kill the undead. Now, my main issue that I have with this game is that it is a little bit frustrating in terms of the general combat. You see, every round, as you're trying to complete objectives, you are going to get a decent sized group of enemies spawning in trying to kill you. Now, the practice of this one is that when an enemy dies, they will drop sometimes either a health resource or a time restore, allowing you to reclaim that character's 8 seconds and keep going on the said turn. So the general loop of combat is that an enemy will spawn in, or enemies will spawn in. You should have one character who can deal with them all using the various time boosters to kind of ping pong across killing them, while the other 2, or maybe only one, can then go and complete the objective or deal with the boss fight. But the game didn't really telegraph that all that well from what I played of it. And this is one of those games that once you start losing, it is very hard to recoup because enemies are constantly spawning in, they're leaving AoE blasts around, and it just got a little cumbersome to play, especially when I got to the elite fight in this stage. Now, we didn't get to see kind of the persistent layer where you're able to pick different paths on the map, upgrade characters, and so on. And the game does feature local and online play with people controlling each one of the different scientists, which could be a lot of fun. For this one, there is definitely something interesting here. I like the aesthetics. It's not something that we oftentimes see, but it does, I think, lack some of the approachability of the genre. But if you are looking for your Valkyria Chronicles fix, but replace World War II with science lasers and zapping ghosts, then I would at least give the demo a check. And with that, we are done with night 1 of our turn-based festival coverage. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have night number 2 to get to. And if you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the game design deep dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. Now up is Vactics. This is a kind of puzzle turn-based roguelike in a sense. Robots have taken over the future, and it's up to us to play as the one good robot in order to save the day. So this is kind of like a tactical puzzle style game. Each map you load in and can pick your position on the field. This goes with a We Go style. When you move, the enemies will move and respond accordingly. How this works is that different movement angles will dictate your ability to attack, such as if there's a space between you and the enemy and you move into it, that is considered a quote-unquote charge attack. If you approach an enemy and they're on your side, that counts as an attack as well. And your mission on each round is to kill the enemies and not suffer any power loss. You lose power every time you are hit or you make an action, and you will reclaim it by killing multiple enemies in a single move or getting a combo. As you go forward, you will unlock new parts that can appear on subsequent runs, as well as gain tech during a run that can give you like a charge move or special abilities. My one kind of damning issue that I have with Vactics is that I wish that the UI was a little bit better in terms of giving you information as to when you are safe or when you are able to hit or get around enemies. You see, there are times where I would move and it didn't seem like I was triggering an attack. And with all the enemies having this kind of same kind of look to them, it's very easy to not pick up, okay, if I move here, am I going to get attacked? And if so, by how many? And this is one of those games where you get into a bad position, that can cost you the entire run, as every enemy hit that connects really drains your power. But with that said, this is definitely a fun little game. If you're looking for kind of like a tactical puzzle-ish style game, I would definitely check out Vactics. We now have Vertical Kingdom, which I could have swear that I played a version of this game a few months ago that was under a different name or different version. If anyone can remember that, please let me know in the comments. This is a deck building style, well, city building roguelike, but with the focus on this kind of side scroll or 2D view compared to some of the 3D ones we've played. Our story is that we are trying to rebuild an empire, and we're going to do it region by region, resource by resource. Your mission in each area is to reach a certain population cap, that is in the upper right. As you add more people to an area, you will unlock additional cards. These cards can belong to different services or features like housing, food, mining, etc. Everything will consume resources that you see in the upper left, and there is bonuses and negatives for placing certain buildings next to each other. The different housing buildings do not like to have the same kind of house next to them. Now, when you complete an area in a region, your resources will be kind of transferred over, but not 100%. I could not see a way, or if there is a way, to do that. Now, There's certainly some interesting aspects here in terms of the progression and kind of the run-based focus, and even some of the puzzle aspects to it. But my main issue that I had with Vertical Kingdom was that it felt like it was very easy to softlock. If you don't transfer enough bricks, for instance, over to another area, and you run out before you get the rewards, well, you can't do anything. You literally can't build any structures. And while there are mines and things that you can build to become sustainable, you're not really given the choice in terms of what upgrades you're going to get access to. Another thing that I did not like about this one, that I'm wondering if it should be changed or not, is that every 5 turns, you tell the game what kind of cards you want to see for the next 5 turns. So, all farming cards, all housing cards, and so on. But again, the problem is that if you don't have the resources, or if you don't have the cards you need unlocked, this feels like another way that you can mess up. Because if you get, mostly housing cards or resource cards and you don't have the room for it, or you don't need those cards and you're not getting the ones that you do, again, it feels like you're kind of behind the 8 ball from the very beginning. Now, this game is definitely interesting. I would recommend checking it out if you are looking for a different kind of city builder, but I do hope we see maybe a little bit more in terms of fine-tuning the UX, especially for first-timers when they start checking out Vertical Kingdom. And now for something that could be even harder in some respect than our last game, we have Puddle Knights. This is a puzzle game that was released a few years ago and was part of turnbasedfest. Our story here is that these rich, snobby nobles refuse to step in the mud and get dirty, so it is up to the Puddle Knights to present a path for them so that they can get to wherever their destination may be. The game starts out very simple. You move your knight around and the cape, or their kind of like long cape there, will move accordingly. You want to set it up so that the noble can walk across it. However, the noble or the knight cannot move if the noble is standing on their cape. And while this starts out very simple, it does get quite complicated. Once you start unlocking multiple knights, the fact that you can tear the cape in certain spots to present a bridge, and of course all the moving and finagling you need to do to get the noble from one spot to the other. And I like this one. This is certainly not easy puzzle gameplay, and it will probably lead to some very mind-bending challenges as you get further in. But the aesthetic is really well done, and it does, I think, a really great job with this theme that the developer kind of went all in on, considering there's, I think, over 100 levels to it. So if you do like your puzzle games to be on the challenging side, I recommend Puddle Knights. We now turn to something, well, a lot darker, and that is Frail Hearts. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Latin that is on screen there, but this is, I believe, an RPG maker, kind of horror RPG, maybe more creepy RPG. The story is that 5 individuals are, well, going to be dealing with some very strange, disturbing, and evil things in a mysterious city. And all their lives are going to be intertwined by this mysterious man you see right here. So the game itself is definitely more story-driven. I don't believe you have any interaction outside of the actual battles. And the battles themselves play out kind of like quasi-puzzle-like. Each character has their own unique abilities and kind of effects that they bring in. One character can do more dodging, one's your healer, buffer, that kind of thing. And the story basically takes you from one disturbing sight and vignette to another. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about from the demo, one, this is definitely not a game for children. There is certainly a lot of cursing and some very disturbing sights, which again I'm not going to show you in this video. But the limited action or limited utility of the game does make it, I think, a little bit more of a kind of an interactive story rather than a full-blown RPG. But If you are looking for a creepy RPG to play and you don't mind, again, like the RPG Maker style, I would check this one out. And if you are looking for something really over the top and certainly not for kids, there's of course Fear and Hunger and Fear and Hunger 2. And now for something a lot lighter, and that's the Obsidian Prince. This is a strategy RPG with both deck building and roguelike elements to it. For this one, we are going to build a band of adventurers to go out and explore a kingdom, fight through dungeons, and of course find treasures. Now, where the different elements come in is that your deck is made up of backstory cards. As a character levels up, as you complete quests with them and do other things, they'll gain new backstories. These backstories can do everything from giving you more health and armor, to even changing the properties of your attacks and specials, based on what cards are drawn. And you'll gain different cards also based on how that character is trained. So if you train a warrior or an archer, they'll get different cards accordingly. Now, the game is built for its strategy, RPG, or tactical layer, as you can see here. One thing that I like is that you have the option to kind of attack move by clicking on a square that's next to an enemy that you'll attack and then immediately move away. Enemies will go one at a time, and you're going to have to try and figure out how to best move around in order to deal with them and of course mitigate damage. Once you beat all the enemies in a level, you'll unlock whatever quests or rewards are there and then move on to the next. Now, since the game was released, they have actually added in a completely full-on roguelike mode, complete with its own progressive difficulty, unlocks, new classes, and so on. While the campaign kind of goes for the progression or longer form progression of unlocking more structures, getting more classes, powering up, and doing stronger and harder dungeons. And the game moves at a very nice clip. And there is definitely something here for fans of strategy RPGs. I don't know really how much variance, either in the campaign or the roguelike mode, you're going to get run by run, because this is so tactically focused. It really comes down to just figuring out a game plan, and then just capitalizing on that every battle regardless of what enemies get thrown at you. So while this game I don't think quite has the depth of, say, a Hades or a Biomusic or a Dead Cells in that regard, the tactical layer is really well done, and I would certainly recommend checking this one out. And now we turn to Skykipelago, which I hopefully didn't butcher that too badly. This is in the long line of the cozy or relaxing city builder style of games, where your goal isn't to build a thriving metropolis, solve all kinds of crazy traffic problems, it's just to get a decent enough score and put buildings down. The basic gameplay here is that you will plop buildings into the area. Buildings will gain or lose points based on what's next to them. So the idea is that as you put your buildings down, you want to have some semblance of strategy as to where things can go and where to maximize your points. You'll unlock new buildings that can show up, which will have their own rules and potential synergies with whatever else you have. Your mission, at least in the basic level, is to get as high of a score as you can within the fixed number of turns. I don't know if there's going to be anything more than that in terms of its gameplay loop, but this is one of those games that it's a very chill experience. So again, if you're hoping for the depth of something like a City Skylines, Factorio, that kind of thing, this game is definitely not going to scratch your itch. But if you're looking for a very casual game to play, something that you can load up, spend 10-15 minutes on, and then move to something else, then this could definitely be a great relaxing game to check out. And now for something a little bit different, we turn to Slaves of Magic. We are back to an XCOM-like, but we are trading guns in the future to spells and swords. So, fantasy XCOM, and when I say XCOM, I'm talking about the original one. The story is that the world has been invaded by demons, and we are going to have to build our forces up, do lots of research, and trying to get our, I'm not sure what the fantasy equivalent of the squaddies, killed. So the demo that we play primarily focuses on combat, but there is a strategic layer including getting and upgrading new gear, providing new skills to your characters, etc, etc. But from what I play of this one, it is definitely reaching towards XCOM, especially in the difficulty department, as your characters can go down fairly quickly if you're not careful, and you're going to have to make use of all their skills and all the gear you can find in order to turn the tide. Now, the big thing that I play from the demo is that it can be a little bit on the slow side. See, every time you move around, you also have to figure out the character's facing orientation, which again, that is definitely something from classic XCOM. But it can feel a little awkward when you're trying to move lots of characters around to get to where they need to be. But this one does show some promise, and if you are looking for an XCOM-like, where instead of reaction fire, you're just going to be using fire spells and swords, then I would at least give the demo a check. I seem to be flip-flopping between casual and challenging games, and our next one is definitely on the later side. This is Diluvian Winds, a kind of, I guess, settlement simulator, settlement sim kind of game, where it is our job to manage a lighthouse and the neighboring area, making sure that the light doesn't go out and disaster strikes the village and world around us. And how we're going to do that is basically hiring literally anyone and everyone who shows up at our door each day. Each person that shows up can belong to a different animal species. This will affect what jobs they are best suited at. Each character will also come with a goal. This goal could be anything and everything from building X structure, eating a specific kind of food, working with someone else, and so on and so on. And your overall goal is to get enough points by completing their challenges in order to win the campaign. Each day you'll gain, or you'll have different followers, and you'll assign them each 2 tasks. You'll need to maintain food, and there's different food supplies that you'll gain from the different villager or character specific buildings. And as you go through, you'll need to make sure you have enough lumber to keep the lighthouse going, deal with any random events that may or may not show up, and just keep working towards that victory goal. At this point, from what we play of the demo, it's hard to tell just how tricky the game will get. But I like the aesthetic of it. It has this kind of charm to it with the different animal characters. If you're hoping for hardcore violence or, animal combat, this is definitely not going to be the game for you. But this could certainly be a delightful game to check out if you're looking for something that it's not quite a casual game, but it's not going to be super hardcore banishment levels of resource and city management. And here's that ping-ponging again with USC Counterforce. This is a very, very detailed kind of squad-based. The game is described as an RPG light. Think, once again, XCOM, but with even more stats, values, and things to keep track of. You are investigating a mysterious alien infestation on a planet, and it's going to be up to you to lead your Marines to victory or get them killed. So the big thing about this game is that it is certainly going all in on character depth. You can improve characters with different passives. It's all class list based. You have a variety of weapons, items, sub-weapons, and all kinds of different ways of interacting and dealing with enemies. I really like that kind of first-person cam footage that you see in the upper right as a little bit of a stylistic choice. But the big issue this game has, the onboarding and general UI UX is not going to be friendly to new people. This is one of those games, as you can see, there is a lot happening on this UI right now. And if you're hoping for something that can kind of wean you in or get you started off on the right foot of learning this game or learning this kind of design, at this point in the demo, USC Counterforce does not do that. And I would definitely not recommend this game If you are new to the genre, or new to just even like strategy or tactical style games, if you are someone, however, who has played the original XCOM, or is looking for a very advanced, very character and stat-driven design, then this is definitely a demo for you. And I hope that when the game is released, there'll be at least a little bit more of onboarding and tutorializing for the rest of us. And at long last, it's time for the last game of our showcase, and probably our last festival game for 2022, and this is Dance of Cards. This is described as a tactical gambling RPG, where we are going to do battle not with swords and spells or guns, but at the poker table. Your mission, of course, is to do your best to win the hands and earn money. And also, as you can see right there, characters get spells and abilities they can use to kind of mess with the pokerness of it. But I'm pretty sure you can get up and swap cards from everyone's hands if you play it like poker in Las Vegas, right? So the game itself is definitely leaning into this idea of it's an RPG, but it's an RPG about poker play. The overall story involves you being stuck on a boat and trying to do your best to win enough money to survive, and you'll find additional partners and people who can help you. As you go through, you'll find gear that can improve your stats, and as you can see, there's definitely some elements of additional play here when it comes to managing stress or causing characters to get stressed in order to make them make more mistakes. And again, as a poker game, it follows all the rules of playing poker. You'll need to know what hands be what, when to call, raise, fold, know when to hold them, and all that. So if you do not like poker whatsoever, Dance of Cards is not going to be the game for you to check out. But I like the kind of, I guess, whimsiness of having these kinds of spells and abilities while still knowing when to go all in on a really good hand. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, and again, a lot of poker to check out, then I would recommend Dance of Cards. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for my turn-based festival coverage. That's been a lot of games. I hope all of you have enjoyed watching this video. You will find links to all of them down below. And if you'd like me to cover your game for a future stream, hopefully not too soon with all the games I have yet to cover, please get in touch. We will certainly be covering more festivals into 2023. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting, and check out the Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until our next major showcase, take care.